Police.
This is Dr. Chris Webster calling from Leongatha Hospital. I have a concern regarding a patient that presented here earlier that has left the building and is potentially exposed to fatal toxin from mushroom poisoning, and I've tried several times to get a hold of her on her mobile phone.
Before I get all of that information, what address do you need?
What you just heard is a recreation of a calm but quick 000 call from a doctor who first treated some of the guests of that fateful beef Wellington lunch. It was also the phone call that led local police to Aaron Patterson's home. I'm Brooke Grebert-Craig, and this is The Mushroom Cook. I'm back at the Herald Sun headquarters in Morwell with my colleague, court reporter Laura Placella once again.
Good to be back as always.
Yes, it is. So today we are on day 7 of Aaron Patterson's murder trial. There were 2 types of testimonies in court today. There were family testimonies and medical testimonies. Let's begin with the medical ones, and we'll play a little bit more from the recreation of the 000 call that we heard earlier.
Mushroom poisoning, you said?
There were 5 people that ate a meal on Saturday, and 2 of them are in intensive care at Dandenong Hospital. 2 have just been transferred from Leongatha Hospital to Dandenong Hospital, and Aaron presented this morning with symptoms of poisoning.
So Laura, can you explain to our listeners who called 000?
So what our listeners just heard both at the top of the episode and just then was the phone conversation Dr. Chris Webster had with a 000 operator. For some context here, Dr. Webster works at Leongatha Hospital, and on July 30 he was one of the on-call doctors. July 30 was the day after the lethal lunch, and Ian and Heather both presented here after they were driven over by their nephew Simon Patterson.
So today in court, he mentioned about the beef Wellington. Is that right?
Once Ian and Heather had arrived and were admitted and triaged, he spoke to them about what they had eaten, considering they were presenting with food poisoning symptoms. They mentioned they had eaten a beef Wellington the day before, and in Dr. Webster's mind, he first thought the culprit of their illness was actually the meat. They remained in hospital over the following hours and were treated by doctors at Leongatha Hospital. But it wasn't until the following day, so July 31, that doctors over at Dandenong Hospital communicated with these doctors at Leongatha and said that they suspected it was mushroom poisoning.
And on that day, Aaron Patterson presented herself to hospital, didn't she?
Yes, that's right. We did hear that today from Dr. Webster. He said it was about 8:05 when Aaron arrived at the front door of the hospital and rang the doorbell, and he was the person who went over to speak to her. He told the jury that Aaron said she had gastro, so he welcomed her into the hospital and started speaking to her about her symptoms. But very quickly, upon her telling him her name, he realised that she was at this lunch. Dr. Webster was asked today by Crown Prosecutor Jane Warren whether he recognised her as the 5th guest, but he actually said in court, "No, I recognised her as the chef of the meal." He asked her a few more questions, one of them concerning where she got the mushrooms from.
And Aaron gave a very short reply back, didn't she?
She did, according to Dr. Webster's answer. She just said Woolworths. It was at this point that Dr. Webster told Aaron that he was worried she may have also been exposed to death cap mushroom poisoning, keeping in mind that he had just heard from the doctors at Dandenong who had raised those concerns, and he really urged her to stay at hospital so she could be treated.
And then essentially Aaron discharged herself from hospital against medical advice.
That's correct. The jury were actually shown CCTV footage today of the moment Aaron walks towards the exit of the hospital. She's stopped by another doctor. This doctor was Veronica Foote, and you can see the 2 of them engaging in a brief conversation before some paperwork arrives for Aaron to sign, which the jury was told was the discharge against medical advice form.
And Dr. Foote was also another witness in today's hearing, wasn't she?
She was, and when the footage was played to the court today, the comment was made that Aaron discharged herself at 8:10, keeping in mind she only arrived at 8:05. So she only spent 5 minutes at the hospital before leaving.
Now this is when Dr. Webster makes that 000 call that we heard earlier.
That's right. It's clear from the discussion he has with the 000 operator that he's worried for Erin's health. She's discharged herself. He doesn't know where she is. So he's asking police to find her and bring her back to the hospital so she can be treated.
But Erin, on her own accord, came back to a hospital herself, didn't she?
That's right. By 9:50 a.m, she was back at Leongatha Hospital. Dr. Webster told the court that when she arrived, he decided he should call police to just explain to them that they no longer were going to find her at her home because she was back at hospital. But in the process of doing that, he realised that if they were at her house, they might have a good opportunity to find some of the leftovers from the beef Wellington lunch so they could be tested. And you would have heard us mention her before, Dr. Foote. She was the doctor who had that conversation with Erin at the door before she did leave earlier in the morning. It was Dr. Foote who received these samples of beef Wellington. They were in a brown Woolworths bag. They arrived at the hospital and the jury was shown some CCTV footage of her putting on some gloves, fishing the leftovers out of the bag and taking photographs. This was because staff at Monash Medical Centre were hoping to have a look at the mushrooms and these samples as soon as possible.
And probably something that our listeners are thinking, what did the beef Wellington look like at this point?
That's a good question. From the CCTV footage, we really couldn't see a lot. It was taken from quite far away. But from what we could see, it looked like Dr. Foote had fished out a small brown mush out of the bag, but as well as that, a larger pastry that could have been half a beef Wellington.
Okay, now moving on to more medical evidence. The prosecution read a statement on behalf of Daniela Romans. Now, she works at the Department of Health.
And I think this is the first time a statement has been read into the transcript. And just to explain to our listeners, this process is very standard in trials and it just helps speed things along. Instead of calling every single person relevant to a trial to give evidence in court, if the evidence isn't in dispute, a simple statement will be read out to the jury.
In her statement, she said that Victoria, the state, has a mandatory reporting of cancer diagnoses and detections. So Miss Romans said she did a search of the Victorian Cancer Registry in March this year. So she was looking for entries relating to Erin Patterson with her date of birth, but she said in her statement that no entries were found. Now, we also heard from Don and Gail's son and daughter and Heather and Ian's daughter. All three of them gave evidence today. And while the medical testimony was quite clinical, the family's evidence was a lot more personal.
That's right. And I'll start with the evidence of Anna Terrington, the youngest daughter of Don and Gail. She told the jury that she spoke to her parents after the lunch, and at the time they said the lunch went well. But by the Sunday, they had been transferred to Dandenong Hospital with quite serious symptoms.
In court, Anna told the jury that she was with her mum, Gail, for long periods of time.
Yeah, she went to the hospital to be by her bedside. Her brother Simon, who is Erin's estranged husband, he was spending time with Don, their dad. And Anna said to the jury that she had to help her mother go to the bathroom several times throughout that night. Anna told the court that while she was at hospital with her mum, they spoke about the lunch. She recalled that her mum had said Erin wanted to tell them about a medical issue, but she said her mum never told her what the medical issue was, and she didn't ask her mum either.
Now let's move on to Matthew Patterson. He's the older son of Don and Gail, so he's Simon Patterson's brother.
And Anna's brother also.
Matthew told the jury that he and Erin had a lunch in 2021, and this is where Erin actually opened up about her relationship with Simon. So just remember, we said this last week, that Simon and Erin separated in 2015. The court heard that Erin asked Matthew for advice on how to get Simon to participate in counselling.
Later on in his evidence, Matthew was asked about the days after the lunch. He was also at Dandenong Hospital. He took over from Anna after she went home, having spent Sunday night with their parents. And it was on Monday that the doctors asked if they knew where the mushrooms in the beef Wellington had come from. And Matthew volunteered to call Erin to find out. He told the court that it was a very quick conversation. I think it was actually mentioned it only went for 1 minute and 13 seconds. And in that brief phone call, he asked where she had gotten the mushrooms from. He told the court that Erin mentioned that there were fresh mushrooms from Woolies and there were also dried mushrooms from a Chinese grocer or supermarket from the Oakley area. After Erin told him that information, he passed it on to the doctors at the hospital.
The jury heard that both Anna and Matthew confirmed that Erin and Simon had loaned them each hundreds of thousands of dollars to help them both purchase their homes. We heard a little bit about this last week. The court heard these loans were indexed to inflation, but no interest was charged. Now let's move on to Heather and Ian's daughter.
Yes, we also heard from Ruth Dubois. She spoke about talking with her parents in the weeks before the lunch, keeping in mind that Erin invited her guests to the lunch in early July at a church service. When Heather was explaining this to Ruth, she said that after church, Erin had approached her and Gail and said, "Just the two I was looking for." She then continued on and said that she wanted to invite them to lunch. Ruth told the court that she was quite surprised to hear Erin had invited her parents to lunch, considering that had never happened before.
So with multiple family members in court today, it was always going to be an emotional day, right?
Yeah, that's right. And particularly when Anna gave evidence, there was a lot of emotion in the court. When she was being questioned about the final days of her parents, she started to become tearful. She clutched her chest at one point and had to take a few pauses before giving her answers, and she also reached for a tissue to blow her nose. And last week, our listeners might remember that her brother Simon also became emotional when speaking about their parents as well.
Now lastly, Laura, the dehydrator has been mentioned in court every single day. Was it raised today?
Now that I think about it, I don't think it was. You're right, we have heard about it most days of the trial, so we'll have to wait and see when it pops up next.
Well, the dehydrator has had a day off, it seems. We'll have to wait to see when it returns. But we'll definitely be back tomorrow with our daily update. And if you want more reports, features, and podcast episodes, head over to themushroomcook.com.au.